Fresh stitches under my hat. Teacher has a no hats in class policy. Sure thing. The car accident was of the side impact variety and it was brutal. This was in the days before airbags and seatbelt laws. 1 second, I'm driving and the next I'm halfway out the passenger window watching blood run off my head to pool in the glass of a previously closed window. Another second ticks by and I'm in the ER receiving 13 crude stitches for 11 inches of wide open scalp. I lost more than 2 pints of blood and a large patch of hair. I also lost my favorite white fishnet t-shirt. But that's a separate tragedy. That Friday of a Labor Day weekend was how my name shows up in the newspaper list of Labor Day weekend accidents. Tuesday comes and I go to class at the local college. Being a teenager gave me the gift of immortality. There I was, fully ambulatory, just 4 days after a serious car accident. For the sake of propriety, I'm wearing a hat to cover the fresh injury. It was a white Panama hat with a bright 80s style hat band. As this was 1983, everything was 80s style, but that's a separate tragedy. Hobbling along, I make it to sociology just as class was beginning. I take a seat at the back of class and settle in. The conversation went something like this. Excuse me. Could you remove your hat please? The teacher had her own sense of propriety. My hat didn't fit with proper classroom attire. I was in a car accident, I replied. Did she hear my words or was one of her rude students muttering another in a career-long list of excuses? Likely the latter was the case. Take the hat off. You cannot wear that in my class, indicated she was not happy with my hat. Not at all. Well, okay then. Off comes my hat. Roughly a third of my hair had been shaved off. The wound was pink and puckered. The seam had a line of dried blood in it. The wound began an inch beyond my missing hairline and continued back, branching into a Y shape. The surgeon's instructions were to keep the wound clean, dry, and unbandaged. Lucky for all in attendance, my mother had washed my scalp the previous day. She used the word gore at some point to describe what was washing off. Imagine you're one of my classmates. Whatever you would say at that point would be something I heard from my classmates and friends. Ah, you can put your hat back on, said the teacher. Not before a little malicious compliance. I won't, but I can't wear hats in class, I replied. I mean, I can do it, but not if I'm breaking the rules. Please put your hat on. Okay. If you insist. And the hat went back on my head. My advice is not to engage in malicious compliance on the first day of class, not in a course where the teacher gives essay questions. That was the only C I received that semester, but that's a separate tragedy.
Now to the comments. You would have been the talk of the staff room.
But that's a separate tragedy.
Lots of separate tragedies here. Rip white fishnet t-shirt.
OP replied. My mother hated that shirt, likely the only good thing to come out of that accident.
Your mother absolutely orchestrated everything. So, Joe Cocker's 1986 version of You Can Leave Your Hat On was sung for you, sort of fits in with the fishnet t-shirt.
But that's a separate tragedy.
As was 9.5 weeks. I can picture your mom calmly washing chunks of meat off your noggin with all her mom freak out kept securely inside. Well, there goes the Rhodes Scholar brain cells.
But that's a separate tragedy.
I don't know what it is about your attitude, but I love the whole "but that's a separate tragedy" comments. Just a complete show of oh well shit happened, I'm fine, duck it.
But that was a separate tragedy.
I thought by the 13th comment that says this that I would be tired of hearing it, but that was a separate tragedy. And just like that, we all get a new catchphrase.
But that's a separate tragedy.
It's separate tragedies all the way down. OP replied. Side note on the ER doctor. He was a cardiovascular surgeon. The limited number of stitches was due to his wanting to save my life and not caring how pretty it looked. He was wearing golfing pants. I asked, they call you in off the course? He replied something affirmative. I'm now in my 50s and still have all my hair, by the way. I'd be happy to never see that scar on display ever again.
I dated a man who'd had significant surgery to remove a brain tumor when he was 12. His scalp was messed up, you could tell by the feel of it, but he had a full head of hair and he mentioned, many times, how grateful he was that he hadn't gone bald like his brother and dad did.
I told the ER doc stitching up my 2-year-old's head, front, partially in the hairline, partially on his forehead, that he was likely to go bald as an adult, so to please bear that in mind when he was stitching. No pressure. He did a great job. It seems the world has gained a new catchphrase, but that's a separate tragedy. When I was in 6th grade I had a similar thing happen. I had been working on a school project and my little brother was playing Pokemon, full volume, told him multiple times to turn it down, and he refused. Fed up with his bullshit, I took his Game Boy, removed the game and threw it across the room. He went to get it and then went to his room. A few moments later he comes out, beet red, hyperventilating, and holding a plastic ruler of all things. He comes at me and put him in a full Nelson or half Nelson or some kind of Nelson. I really don't know what a Nelson is, but whatever. So, I'm trying to calm his ass down without really hurting him and also kind of laughing because it's hilarious. He came at me with the ruler. Ducking. Ruler. He was no John Wick, not that John Wick was a thing, but that's a separate tragedy. The first Matrix had just come out though, and wearing sunglasses everywhere was definitely a thing. I had a good handle on it until Mom comes out of her room. Pissed. I realized how the situation looked and I loosened my grip on my brother. Mistake. He now had enough wiggle room to swing his arm around and the tip of his ruler scratched my eye. Ouch. So, Mom takes me to the ER, and thankfully no real damage had been done. Just scratched something or other or whatever. They gave me some ointment and sent me home. When I wake up in the morning my entire left eye is blood red. It was incredibly creepy to look at. There isn't any real pain, but I did have some light sensitivity, so I grabbed my pair of sunglasses and went to school. A miniature Neo. I get to homeroom and the teacher tells me I need to take them off. Now, I'm in 6th grade and I know I look like a freak and I really don't want to do that, so I tell her that the light hurts my eyes, maybe the most emo shit I could have said. We go back and forth for a bit and I get brought out to the hallway. She tells me to take them off or we're gonna go see the principal. Now that I'm not around all the other kids I take the glasses off and show her my eye. She says, put those back on and get back in class. This happened 2 more times with different teachers until they all got the memo and I got wear sunglasses in school for 2 weeks. Which was cool as hell. It turned out that almost everyone thought my eye was pretty cool too, so that was just a bonus.
OP replied. A friend scratched my eye with a rusty railroad spike when I was in 4th grade. Totally my fault. They wouldn't give me a black eye patch. I wanted to be a pirate so bad. Instead, all I got was a big white bandage. Stupid doctor.
But that's a separate tragedy. This is amazing. Also, I'm so glad you're okay. It's crazy to think we used to just drive around with such limited safety precautions. LOL. I had a similar experience 2 years when my best friend was diagnosed with cancer our senior year. We both shaved our heads and were wearing winter hats because it was cold and we were teenage girls trying not to draw attention. A teacher yelled at us across the hall, "Nice hats, take them off." My friend looked at him and said, "But I have cancer." he was so mortified, and we still chuckle about it today.
Same thing happened to me when I was going through chemo. Sometimes I wonder if that student teacher still lies awake at night thinking about the time she made a 6-year-old with cancer cry when she made me take off my bucket hat in class and had to immediately backtrack.
I think that's the part that makes it just top tier cringe, lol, like they were accidentally dicks, not just to someone with cancer, which is bad enough, but a child with cancer. I'm glad you seem to have made a recovery. Please tell me you're a writer. Being in any other field would be a separate tragedy.
OP replied. I certainly am a writer. I've written thousands of programs over the years. Maybe it will give you hope that I was well known in college for documentation bombing my programs, 1,000-line program / 5,000 lines of documentation. By the time I made it to grad school, when other students were asking how long should the paper be, I was asking how short do I need to keep it. Leadership professor said 18 to 24 pages. I turned in a 42-page paper. A year later a friend was taking the same class. Turns out the professor was using my paper as an example of you don't have to be this guy.